Welcome back to another episode of the Chill Film Discussion. This week we're starting a bit late, just because, yeah, World Cup is happening right now. So I watched the match. That's why we're late. But um, so today we discussed Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, sequel to the first Black Panther. It's a Marvel movie. It sort of features the aftermath of um, King T'Challa's death, which sort of mirrors real life. Chadwick Boseman, who played Black Panther T'Challa, he also unfortunately passed away before. So we're basically seeing like the aftermath of his death, what's happened to Wakanda since Avengers Endgame, who is going to become the next Black Panther, and the introduction of a new character, Namor, who is sort of seen as the antagonist, but maybe is more of like an anti-hero
Hmm.
kind of situation in the future. But yes, so essentially it's um yeah, that's sort of like the premise of like the film. The main conflict is sort of revolved around Talokan, which is where the underwater empire, which is sort of like DC's Atlantis. And essentially they are trying to protect their resources because they also have vibranium, trying to protect their resources from the surface world.
Hmm.
So they sort of interact with Wakanda and are like, "Hey, yo, Wakanda, you are going to either be with us or against us, and if you're against us, we're going to be our first target." Which sets up the conflict between Wakanda and Talokan and
Mm.
Shuri and Namor. And I think that's my biggest gripe for this film is that like that conflict feels forced. I feel like they didn't need to be in that conflict at all. Like they're very similar in terms of like the outside, in terms of like the issues that they face, where like the outsiders are trying to pillage the resources, or in this case, the vibranium, their technology, whatnot. And I
Right.
think that they could have easily just like talked it out, be like, oh yeah, let's protect each other, you know? But I understand why they got into this conflict because it's, for the sake of the movie, but it just feels like it didn't really need to happen in the first place. I think that the film did a good job with commemorating Chadwick Boseman's death. I do like how they brought about like the theme of grief a lot in this film. The Queen's death was a bit of a shocker to me.
Hmm.
But added stakes to this film, which was really nice. I like the humor that was in this film. It was not forced. Like the comedic parts were, you know, they were sprinkled in very well throughout this film.
Right.
I think it was yeah. And I do appreciate how they made Shuri the next Black Panther. I think it made a lot of sense considering like her own internal like the character's internal
Hmm.
conflict and how grieving both her brothers, and then like also her mother's death. Like I think it made a lot of sense.
Right.
But yeah, I think overall, it's just like my biggest gripe was like the conflict. It just wasn't believable. I just didn't think it was there for convenience, right? It's there because there was a movie
Right.
that needed to showcase this conflict, introduce this character, see how Wakanda reacts to, without Black Panther.
Hmm.
So yeah, overall decent movie. Definitely one of the better Phase 4 movies,
Yeah.
but still had some that major gripe.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's fair enough. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I enjoy this movie a lot. Watching it, and I did not expect it to be as good as it would be, right? Because I thought with the loss of Chadwick Boseman, they would have to kind of reintroduce a new character to kind of take, or even just introduce a new way for a character to take up the mantle. And I was worried how they were going to do that. But they kind of surpassed my expectations here, and they did a really good job in trying to show that yes, Shuri is the next Black Panther, and how she evolved her character. This is a character we already know before. This is adding on to and evolving, who she was going to be, right? So they did it in a really good way, really engaging way, which made sense and kind of satisfied me with, yes, Shuri will be the Black um, Panther. I had definitely had other characters I may have supported or wanted to, but here in this story, it made they did a really good job portraying why she was taking up this mantle. I enjoy a lot of the action scenes here. It's really well done. Still enjoyed Okoye's kind of fight. From the first one and especially here in the second one and all the fight scenes that were happening. And I really enjoyed, I think, Namor, right? His introduction and, showing the world of the Talokan and how, there's this whole underwater civilization that we didn't even know about, but who is kind of, also very powerful and just, as a, diverse representation in the superhero lineup of the MCU. I did think it was a bit kind of cheesy how similar they were trying to make Talokan to Wakanda, right? Having Talokan have its own salute, their own chant, right? It does parallel Wakanda in so many ways, and yes, it makes sense because here the horse king is like a god, so you have some kind of cultish kind of rituals and whatnot, and worshiping, right? But at the same time, it just seems like, yes, this is kind of like a repeat of Wakanda, and it's like, yes, you're trying to do the same thing, that Wakanda was, but at the same time, it does came off as like, yeah, they're just trying to copy and paste like what they did for Wakanda. They're trying to do it for Talokan, which I think by itself it's probably a good thing, but the taken as a whole with Wakanda, it's just like, yeah, they're just like the same thing trying to be done here, right? It's just like saying like, oh yeah, let's just like make a new civilization and to have their own chant and salute and whatnot. It's like, yeah, it's just almost copy and paste, just with a different culture, being mixed in, right? So that was a little of a gripe there for me. But other than that, the conflict, I think also between Wakanda and Talokan, I don't know if I would say is as forced. It made sense the way that they were going about it, but I just think Namor, the way that he's reacting to trying to he's not. It doesn't seem like he's the greatest politician, right? The way he acts with Shuri versus with Kumunda, it does get this bit weird conflict or different kind of the way he interacts with both. What are his kind of goals, right? Yeah, it is a bit muddy here, which kind of makes doesn't make too much sense because there's a little whiplash. Does he want him to have peace, right? Like when he's trying to court like Shuri, like, yeah, we'll be our ally, or is he trying to be more on a destructive path, like kind of threaten and give an ultimatum to the queen, right? So there's a little bit of kind of like confusion there. But other than that, also love just the way that the writing that happened, all the interactions, all the performances, was really really great. Really liked how they kind of had Killmonger show up in the ancestral plane. That was a twist I was not expecting, but kind of drove home to Shuri's own character, like in her internal conflict. And that kind of leads to the end where it was like, yeah, Shuri had all this I guess justification to enact her revenge, but she goes to rise above it, right? There's a callback to a line that the previous Black Panther T'Challa kind of said in Civil War, which all makes sense, and gives a satisfying conclusion to why she doesn't kill Namor, right? Any other explanation probably would have been too cheesy or just been unsatisfying. It's like, why did she not do it? She had all this anger, but here it makes sense because there's a callback to a previous theme that was kind of explained upon, right? It's almost like, yes, they had a character who grew and they learned that lesson from the previous one, and they built it in here and they elevated the character. So I thought that was really really well done on how they handled it. But yeah, I did enjoy this movie a lot. In how they kind of executed, and yes, there are a few things maybe here and there that could have taken away, but I do think that this is definitely one of the better Phase 4 Marvel films that were to come out, and even one of the better Marvel films in general, right? Maybe there's definitely a lot more Marvel films I enjoy, but this definitely takes one of the, I think, top tier of like the 20 or something movies that they have out there. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think yeah. So I think we'll just do our final ratings, and then yeah, I think my final rating for this movie is probably going to be like a 7.
7.
Um, just because like that's a having the main having the main conflict of the movie not being very believable and like feeling forced is a pretty glaring um concern.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think if they did something more with like yeah, I mean maybe they could have done something where like Nemours like if they didn't like necessarily humanize Namor as much or give him enough backstory and then basically just made him like oh yeah like he is like a typical baddie or some sort then like
I
or
don't know.
maybe he's just like the aggressor
Yeah.
like he doesn't really because he doesn't you know have any sort of like diplomacy or anything or has some gripe against Wakanda because like
Hmm.
Wakanda discovers their vibranium or whatever but like it just feels like yeah they this the conflict between Wakanda and Talokan just didn't in the current state of the movie just
Right.
didn't feel
If they kind
believable.
of handled it or explained it in a different way or had the conflict be from a different, it says like, yeah, if you don't join me, you're against me, and yeah, I think they could have
Yeah, yeah.
definitely.
Because that's like the initial interaction they had. He just
Yeah,
threatened them. And, like it just didn't
makes
make
sense.
sense to
Yeah,
immediately. But yeah,
especially when you're trying to
so
get an
that's
ally, right? So
right. So yeah, that's sort of my rating. Like I said, it's still a decent film. I do recommend it, especially if you've seen the first Black Panther. I still think it's
yeah,
a good film. So yeah.
right. For me, I think my rating for this film would be an 8.5. Because I really enjoyed it. Good superhero film, and great, I think great writing and great story in how they do it. With themes that kind of are engaging throughout the film, and you kind of see how they handle the death of Chadwick Boseman in a really really well done way. But I think yeah, just some parts, just as you said, the conflict in itself. I think for me, just the way they kind of, I mean, yes, they try to show a new civilization for diversity's sake, and which I do appreciate, but it just seems like they're almost copying the same formula that they try to do for Wakanda, which is
Yep.
not in itself, unique. So I kind of wish they kind of did it its own, had a more original take on it. But yeah, but I do enjoy Talokan. I do enjoy Namor a lot. Um, but yeah, I thought this movie was just a very enjoyable ride in itself, and I would recommend this movie to watch because I think it's there for a very good time if you sit down to take a look at it. So
Awesome. Well, that is going to end our stream or discussion today.
yeah,
Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next week.
yeah,
Yep, with a new movie that we will determine off
yeah,
stream again.
indeed.
Um, so next week I should be back this to the original time of 11 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, unless there's another World Cup match, maybe.
Yeah,
But for
that'll
now,
happen.
that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Cheerio.